All right. Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season. I am here today with Dr. Marks. My name is Erica. I am the community manager here. Dr. Marks is here to talk to us about the settle mat and what exactly that is. If you have any questions at all, drop them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. And I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Marks take it away.
Thanks, Erica. Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm really excited to talk about this today because I think this is a topic that a lot of people, including veterinary professionals, we don't think about as much. It's a newer concept to have a settle mat, but how one small little rug or bath mat could really change your whole life and your dog's life. So let's start off by talking about what is the purpose of the settle mat? Well, if my house could look like this at all times, which it definitely doesn't, and if yours does, tell us the magic secret. But if my house could look like this at all times, and my sweet little Samantha would curl up next to me and start doing yoga with me in a very meditative way, life would be a lot calmer, right? I wouldn't have to think about excessive panting or pacing, or is she going to go off, get worked up when the doorbell rings from the postman or an Amazon delivery or whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is, we, unfortunately, most of us don't have this serenity at home. And more importantly, we don't have commands, or we haven't worked on training with our dogs to give them the opportunity to settle. And why is that important? Why is settling so important? Well, as we'll talk about in a second, anxiety, fear, and stress are really, really bad for emotional health of pets, as they are for us. And so introducing this concept of a settle mat can, like I said, be game-changing and life-changing for your dog. So the definition of a settle mat truly is this. It's a specified mat. A lot of times we talk about just a bath mat or like a doormat that's comfy from the front of your, like entering your home, or from like your mud room, something like that, wherever you are, that your dog can go to and relax. And this is very important concept. This is not their dog bed. This is actually a mat that they are going to be trained to think about, that when I go there, my body is mush, my brain is calm, and life is good again. This is not telling them to go to their crate, and this is not telling them to go to their favorite dog bed that's at the end of your bed or in your bedroom. Okay, a little bit different concept. So why do we need this settle mat? Why would you listening today be like, oh, this definitely is for me? Well, does your dog ever seem too excitable? I can't calm them down. They're jumping, they're barking, they're whining. Someone walks in your house and 10 minutes later, your dog is running around and doing zoomies and can't calm down. Does your dog have separation anxiety? So whenever there's a sense that you're going to be exiting the room, whether it's leaving the house or going to the bathroom, and your dog starts pacing and panting and whining and pacing and picking up toys and running around and trying to figure out what's going on. Remember, we've talked about this a little bit, and there's a great webinar on separation anxiety you can look for, also record in the Clubhouse. But if that's happening, this is a great technique for you. Is your dog reactive towards people? Reactive is the newer term for aggressive. And the reason that was changed is because dogs are not aggressive. When dogs growl at another dog or at another person or at both, they are responding to a fear response inside of them. So there's anxiety about being on a leash, or their anxiety about their territory, or anxiety about resource guarding, whatever that is. And then they react abnormally. So does your dog do that towards other people? Does your dog do that towards other dogs? Does your dog show OCD behaviors? It's actually more common in dogs than we thought, just like in people. So is your dog a tail spinner? They're just chasing their tail constantly. Does your dog go pick up a toy and drop it? Pick up a toy, drop it. Pick up a toy, drop it. Is there some patterned action that your dog does that doesn't seem to have any kind of result? This is a great technique for them too. But most importantly, above all, kind of like I was hinting with the yoga mat, would you like more control of your dog's behavior during the day? And I have yet, and there's always a first, but I have yet to met a pet parent or a veterinarian, even like myself, to say no to this question. Who doesn't want more control over how our dogs behave during the day, especially when it relates to some of these behaviors I just mentioned? So here's the good news. You don't need a lot for this training. It's pretty simple to get started. What you need is a mat. So yoga mat, bath mat, front door mat. I tend to suggest something a little more comfy, although we don't want it too comfy that your dogs just like hang out and go to sleep on it. It's a training tool, so something like that. We also suggest having a clicker. Now, if you look at the picture on the right, you'll see this gorgeous dog getting a clicker training exercise. And that's that little blue thing that the person is putting a thumb on. You don't technically, though, need a clicker if you can make the following sound with your tongue, which sounds just like what a clicker would sound like. A lot of people go, why does clicker training work? Well, this is the simplest way I can make it kind of explain it. When you are working with your dog, and let's say it's not even settle mat, let's say we're trying to train sit, the starter command, right? Whenever your dog sits, or in this case, does the behavior we want, we are going to make the sound, either push the clicker or make the sound with our tongue. And what that does, it essentially is like an instant snapshot for your dog's brain to take a picture of the behavior and at the same time tell them, good job. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's a sound that triggers that dog to understand, oh, sitting, good. That's what I need to do. So eventually we don't even use a voice command. We just click. So it's important to either have the clicker, or if you can do it with your mouth, that's great too. It works the same. And then appropriate treats. So step one, we're going to place the mat down and wait quietly. This might take some time. So don't do this 10 minutes before you got to go to work on a Monday morning. Okay. This is a weekend behavior or weekend training behavior. And I've listed clickertraining.com here because that's a great resource for you if you want more information on the clicker itself, not just using it for a settle mat, but let's say you want to use it for sit and stay and come and drop and lots of other training techniques. If you want, excuse me, more information on the clicker itself, that's a great website. So put the mat down and just wait quietly. Okay. Step two is when your dog comes over to the mat and steps on the mat. Now, this is the key to training. We have to be on the ball and we have to have our timing pretty perfect. This is the hardest part of training. It's on us. Dogs are pretty smart. It's us that sometimes we don't follow instructions. We want to, as soon as your dog steps on the mat, so I'll use Samantha, my dog as an example. I praise Samantha and click my clicker, because that's going to imprint with that dog's brain, good move. That was great. I made a good choice. And then we're going to place treats on the mat and let the dog have a treat. Your dog might walk away and get bored, right? And then they're going to come back in. And as soon as your dog steps on the mat, good job, Samantha, here's a treat. After a couple times, your dog's going to be like, well, this is cake. All I have to do is walk over to mom's mat over here, step on the mat, and I get a yummy treat. Good job, Samantha. So they're going to want to come to this mat a lot more quickly the next time. We need to do that 10 times to establish a good habit. The key, remember, is to click and praise at the same time. So we don't want to click and then go see 10 seconds later, oh, good job, Samantha. And then 10 seconds later, be like, oh, shoot, I forgot the treat. And then give them a treat. Dogs are very conditioned to learn the behavior, again, that's timed coincidentally and concurrently with the praise. So we have to reward them in the moment because it's that instant, that click. Think of it like a snapshot, right? Like a Polaroid. That's in their brain going, oh, that's a good thing I do. So they're going to keep coming back to the mat. Okay. So step 3 is, if you have a dog who has done this 10 times, let me tell you, after 10 times, if it was the case with Samantha, She did not want to move from the mat because all of a sudden she's getting super yummy treats and she didn't really have to do anything, right? So for us to move to the next step of training, we need your dog off the mat. So a lot of times what we have to do then is throw some treats to the corner of the room or the other way and let your dog be like, oh, treats in it somewhere else, and let them move completely away from the settle mat. Because what we need to do is make sure this wasn't a fluke. We're going to roll up our mat and move it to a new location. And we're going to do the same thing. Now, if your dog has already gone through obedience or advanced obedience and understands the word release, that command, feel free to use that. That is a great way if your dog's at an extended stay, extended sit, a wait, whatever it is. The release is sort of their freedom, right? I can move away. I don't have to sit in this moment. So if they're already trained to do that, great. If your dog doesn't know that command, please don't confuse them. Just throw the treats into another area. Now, when we start in the new spot, so let's say our mat is down in location number 2, they don't get off this easy by just stepping on it. In order for them to get treats here, they have to walk and put all 4 paws on the mat this time. So wait for them to walk over, and smart dogs, which all of them are, but some of the smarter ones out there will even look back at you with just the 1 paw and be like, last time all I had to do was 1 paw and you gave me a treat. Then they might put 2, they'll keep looking. And then all of a sudden, when 4 paws are on there, remember, it's the timing. Good job, Samantha, and give a treat. Okay. About praise, just one quick thing. Oftentimes, guilty is charged. When we are parenting, we like to overdo the praise. Oh my God, Samantha, you're the best dog ever. I can't believe you did this. I'm so proud of you. Ah! And we go crazy. Remember that dogs are confused when we are too verbose. Commands and praise need to be succinct. So 3 words is about the most I want to do. Good job, blank. Great job, blank. Woo, blank. Whatever you want to do. Yes, blank. But we don't need to do a diatribe of a paragraph of praise every time they do this, because it will confuse them. And it'll also honestly lose their attention and we'll go other places. So just make sure your praise is consistent and the same every time and short-winded. Okay. So they've gotten all 4 feet, like these beautiful little creatures here. And now we're going to repeat. So we're going to, we've done this 10 times. They're standing on the mat. They're doing awesome. My dog does not know release. So I'm throwing the treats to another corner and I'm going to move the mat to a new location. Okay. These are not mats that we leave down all the time. These are training tools. This is different from your crate if you leave your crate out. We don't want your dog to find this settle mat as a place to just chill out on a lazy day. This is a tool for us to use in situations where your dog is too excitable. Okay. So this is something where you're going to roll it up, move it to a new location. And now next level for your dog to earn those treats is they have to walk with all 4 paws and either sit or lie down on the mat. That might take a little longer for you to see and observe, but remember, the first time they do that on their own, with no initiation from you, good job, Samantha, and treat. Now, to encourage them into that is sometimes we have to make the treat a little bit more enticing. So if you started with standard treats and that has worked, but now all of a sudden you're waiting for them to sit and your dog's looking at you like, I figured this out. You were supposed to give me a treat for just walking on here. Sometimes we need to up the ante and go to little pieces of fat-free turkey hot dog, or little pieces of string cheese, or little pieces of oyster crackers, or whatever it is that your dog gets really jazzed up about, so that they see when I sit, all of a sudden I was just getting a piece of a milk bone and now mom's giving me hot dog. I think I'm going to sit. That's a better choice. So we do that repetitively. And again, once they sit or lie down, they don't have to do both. Then you can give up to 10 treats. Now here is where we pause. So you've done the paw on the mat. You've done all 4 paws on the mat. You've done sit on the mat. Here's where we pause because this is a critical piece. We do not want your dog to be conditioned that every single time they do anything with a settle mat, they get a huge treat, because then your dog's just going to work you for it. And we need them to understand that part of them just going there is being praised. So this is where we build up what are called treat intervals. This is where we feed 10 treats, and in between each treat, we do a pause. Meaning, let's say my dog Samantha is gone, done all 4 paws and sits down. Good job, Samantha, and I gave her a treat. She knows now she's getting the hot dog. Her tush is not moving off that mat. She is sitting there and waiting for me to give another treat and another treat, and another treat. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait a second and then give her another treat. And then I'm going to wait a second and I'm going to give her another treat. And then I'm going to throw those treats away so she gets off the mat. Next time she comes on, I'm going to give her a treat, but then I'm going to wait 2 seconds and then treat her again, wait a couple more seconds. And we're going to do this for a while, all the way up to the 15-second pause. Now, some people are like, why would you make a dog do that? Why would you make them wait that long? The point of this settle mat is twofold. One is for them to know what it means, that this is where I go to calm down. But we also want them to know that this is not for 1 second. This might mean that they need to stay on their settle mat for 5 minutes, and it's okay. Meaning that we're working them up to extended periods of time on the settle mat. So once they get there and are calm, we can give them a chew toy or a Kong or a rope toy soaked in chicken broth or whatever it is, so that they've chosen that mat as quiet time and they know it's cool to stay there. So step 6 is where we add the cue. All this time, remember, I've never said anything about telling your dog to go to the settle mat, right? We've just waited for them to choose that behavior on their own and then rewarded them for a good choice. This is where we actually cue them to go there. And this is, of course, incredibly important, because if your dog is terrified of the Amazon delivery person, and every time you see that van pulling up, you see your dog actually tells you, right, that Amazon is coming, because your dog's up on the edge of the couch and barking and ears are back and pacing and panting, going crazy. What we don't want is that. What we do want is for us to be like, ooh, Amazon normally delivers about this time. I think what I'm going to do is cue Samantha, settle, or Samantha, go to bed, or Samantha, mat, whatever it's going to be. So she goes, instead of the Amazon delivery guy getting her fearful or anxious, she's going to think to herself, oh, settle mat, right? I walk over to this mat, I sit down, mom gives me hot dogs, and then I get a frozen Kong toy. This is awesome. So right before or as you put the mat down, we're going to teach the cue. So as I lay the mat down in place of my choice, I'm going to say, Samantha, settle. She's going to walk over, all 4 paws, sit down, and I'm going to do my treats at a treat interval. Our success, excuse me, 1 second. Our goal is for us to reach, excuse me, 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the mat. Now, a lot of people would look at that and be like, you're crazy. There's no way that my dog is going to stay for 2 minutes and 30 seconds without any kind of restraint, like a crate on a mat. Well, I will tell you, it is very achievable. Excuse me. So step 7, once we get there and your dog has achieved that 2 minute, 30 second threshold, step 7 is to add some distance. Most of the time when we're doing the settle mat training, we have been in very close proximity to that mat because we're giving treats, we're using our clicker or a, right? We're doing that right next to the mat and right next to our dog. But we don't want to have to stay right next to the settle mat, right? That unfortunately defeats the purpose of having a place where your dog can go for quiet time where you're dealing with a house guest. So this is where, after we've added the cue, then we add distance. So when you're doing your treat intervals, they're sitting on the mat, you give them that high reward treat. We wait about anywhere from 3 to 15 seconds. That's when we take one step back, wait for them to be still, give them another treat. Everything's cool, another step back, and another treat. And that allows us to not have the settle mat right next to the front door or right next to the dinner table or wherever you're going to be when the stressful event is going to happen. If it's going to be a long period of time, let's say you have someone to install a cable box, right? And unfortunately, those never take 10 minutes. This is the opportunity for you to give them something to chew on for that long period. A frozen Kong toy, a rope toy, a Nylabone, something that your dog has chosen before as a yummy treat option, but that occupies them for a period of time. And again, this is not something where you give them a chew and 30 minutes later, you're expecting your dog to just be frozen there on the mat. This is something where periodically you can click and reward. Again, when your dog chooses to be demonstrating the behavior that you want, meaning laying or sitting quietly and chewing on their toy, you can praise and click and give them a high reward treat, reinforcing why they're on that settle mat. So tips for success, because I imagine we might have some questions and I want to make sure we have time. First tip, always end a session. That sounds kind of silly, like, well, of course I'm going to end it. I'm not going to do settle mat training the whole day. We have to give your dog a cue that the session is over, which means we take the mat, we roll it up, we walk away, we put it away. We don't allow them access to the mat except when they are training or in use of settle. Because again, we don't want them desensitized to the importance of the mat. This is not their dog bed. This is not, a place where they hang out and wait for you to come home. This is a training tool. So always end the session. Never, ever, 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 just like with your crate, never use the mat as a punishment place. This is not timeout. This is not anything that should ever have a negative tone. This is always a positive, safe space. Number 3, don't interrupt your dog when they are settled. So if your dog is doing this beautiful down that this doodle is demonstrating and has been doing that very comfortably for 6 or 7 minutes and hasn't moved at all and is really relaxed and calm, we don't need to proactively interfere and go, want a chew toy, want a rope, want a treat, blah, blah, blah. If your dog is comfortable, it's sort of like the adage with babies, never wake a sleeping baby. We don't disturb a settled dog. Let them settle until they need our assistance to settle again. Keep your sessions short. I know I talked about a lot of training here and it sounds like it's a lot of time. I'm talking 30 seconds to 2 minutes of training a day. These are not long sessions. A lot of dogs, when they go into these sessions, envision that they have the attention span of a 3-year-old toddler. Okay, so we want to keep them short and focused and then let them be. And the final thing is we can use pheromones. We've talked about pheromones before. Remember, they're natural chemical compounds that dogs emit, and we do too, but dogs emit ones that go directly to dogs and we emit ones that go directly to other humans. There's quite a few. One I use in particular called Adaptil, which is the canine dog appeasing pheromone. There's a wonderful product in spray form that you can spray on the mat that is just like a chill pheromone for dogs. Very similar to us using lavender or chamomile, although that's aromatherapy. It's the best sort of analogy I can use. But you can, as you're doing your training, you can put the mat down and spray your Adaptil. We usually recommend 8 pumps or 8 sprays per session. And as your dog works on the settle mat, it'll just give them this wonderful, natural, warm relaxation feeling as they're working, which will help them be more prone to following instruction. So I'm going to stop there for now. Certainly throw it back to Erica to see if there's any questions or anything else that I can answer about this.
That was wonderful. I did throw the link to the Adaptil pheromone inside the chat. A couple questions that came up. One of them is, if you have multiple dogs, would you train separately or together? And would you have separate mats?
Such a great question. So the answer is we train separately and they each have their own settle mat. We don't want dogs necessarily sharing their settle mat, although I have had some pretty rare instances, excuse me, where puppies, litter mates are going through training together and they're inseparable and they want to be together. That doesn't happen super often. So if you're bringing a new dog into a home or you're doing rescue work or whatever it is, I always encourage everybody to have each dog it's just like a cat with a scratching post. Each cat in a home should have their own. Each dog should have their own settle mat, and they should have their own individualized time, because a lot of dogs have different treat preferences. You might have dogs from the same litter that have totally different palates. So if one dog really loves hot dogs, if the other one doesn't love hot dogs, they're going to be like, well, this stinks. I don't want to do any of this work. So try to personalize it as much as you can.
Perfect. And then the other one was, if they think it's a toy, like the mat itself, even though you're in the process of training and they put one paw on and then they kind of see, oh, there's a mat here, and then they start to treat it as a toy, or they think it's a game, or they start to chew on it or scratch it, would you find a new mat, or are there ones that maybe are chew proof that you could use instead?
That's also a really great question, because it's really common, right? So a lot of dogs, especially if they're, I guess this goes back to choosing your training time, meaning the short sessions. I would also choose the time you train. So I would not train a dog to settle first thing in the morning before they've been out for their morning walk and had breakfast, right? They're not in the mood to think about this. For me, always the best time to train is after they've had a long walk or have been to the dog park and have had exercised their body, where they're relaxed and still and kind of hungry, right? They're like a treat after a long, day at the dog park is yummy. So if they're a little hungry, ready to accept treats, and they're not like, I haven't been outside in 6 days, kind of cabin fever, that's the best time to train. So in regards to if your dog is really choosing that mat as a toy, first thing I would do is think back and be like, maybe I picked the wrong time to train them. They need to get out. They need an outlet. They haven't been at daycare all week, whatever the case may be. But if your dog is very mouth oriented, so if your dog always carries around a whoopee in her, his or her mouth, or a blanket, or a stuffed toy, or a BALL, or whatever it is, they often will put anything in their mouth, because those dogs a lot of times sense the environment by how it feels in their mouth. Some of these dogs have been weaned early and just have other sensory issues. So if that's the case, then I often say, don't choose a mat that has the same texture preference that your dog likes. Meaning, if your dog always carries around like a rubber bone or something in its mouth, don't choose a rubber mat to train on, because they're going to have that same affinity for that texture, and it's going to feel familiar and good to have it in their mouth rather than to sit on it. So if your dog likes smooth, rubbery, ball-like stuff, then I would get one of those like, not mohair, but just sort of like those welcome mats that aren't like necessarily bristly, but aren't smooth, right? So that they have a little more texture, so they know it's a mat. We want it comfortable, but we also don't want, like I said, the same texture of something that they always put in their mouth. If you've tried all these things and your dog is still putting the mat in their mouth, the best thing to do is very similar to what we do when they're doing other unwanted behaviors, which is no reward. No reward means no treats, no praise, no attention at all. And eventually your dog is going to be like, well, nobody cares that I'm destroying this mat. I'm going to do something else. And then we can pick a different mat, different place, and again, a different time of day to try and do the training.
Perfect. And then the last question was, I know you'd said to make these actual training sessions where you pull the mat out and then end it where the mat goes away. What if it's in the middle of the day and you have an unexpected guest that comes to the door? Do you pull the mat out then? Or do you, use the crate instead of the settle mat? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so I think a couple different scenarios there. One is, I would not rely on your settle mat until you've gone through these steps. Because if your dog is not super trained on a settle mat, what we don't want to happen is, one, to say, like you said, you have an unexpected visitor selling Girl Scout cookies at the door, right? And you're not expecting it. And you're like, oh, settle mat. And where's my mat? Where's my treats? I'm not ready, blah, blah, blah. And then you get discouraged. Your dog's like, what's going on with mom? And then there's no point in doing that, right? So what I would say is until you've gone through step 7, don't rely on this technique as your settle plan, right? Plan A. This should be something that, again, it takes some time. This is not hard stuff to do. It just takes some time, right? And then when you finally gotten to this point, then what we do is we make sure that all of these things are ready for you in visual form, meaning most of the time, veterinarians like myself, my settle mat is in my front room by the door because my dog is triggered mostly by sound, by doorbells and like car horns and things like that. So I have treats in my treat bag, and I just use my, instead of a clicker, and my mat right in a little like decorative basket, sort of like a woven basket, right next to the front door. So if I'm like expecting an Amazon delivery, or I'm expecting home repair or something like that, it's all right there. I put the mat down in her corner. I've got her treats. I'm ready to go. Right. Whereas if your mat's in the bedroom and the treats are in the kitchen, your clicker's nowhere to be found, and all of a sudden the doorbell rings, right? That's so frustrating. And then you're like, why did I spend all this time training? So I would say, make sure you've gone through all your steps, have your backup plan, like a crate or an X pen or something like that. And then 2, make sure you have them all in one area so that it's very easy to just roll it out. You got your clicker and your treats and you're ready to go. Because otherwise it's, you can't really react, like the moment's done. It's the very same thing with training. We reward positive behavior in the moment. So that means a snapshot in your dog's brain. The same thing happens with negative behavior. So if your dog hears the doorbell and they're going crazy from anxiety, and all of a sudden we're like, okay, go settle, Samantha. Oh, what was my cue? I can't remember. Where's my treat? Blah, blah, blah. And your dog sees you anxious. They're going to see that behavior and think that's what's normal. And they're going to continue to do their anxious behavior, which is not what we want. So that's, I guess, I hope that answers your question.
Yes. No,
Perfect.
that makes a lot of sense. All right. That was all the questions that we did have. If you think of any questions later on, feel free to reach out to any of the care coaches. This video will go up inside the clubhouse and on the YouTube channel if you need to go back to refer to it. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to a care coach. You can always reach out to any of the veterinarians. Dr. Marks, I'm sure you're available for questions as well. And I think that's all I have. If there's anything else that you have that you wanted to add.
No, I just wish everybody the best of luck, and we are happy to help. I know this is sort of a newer concept for a lot of pet parents with dog training, even if you had many dogs in the past. But I promise you that if you work at this, not only is it going to be great for your dog, because we want our dogs to have good emotional health, meaning is the least amount of fear, anxiety, and stress from things that are triggering them, but also it allows us to have a calmer or more peaceful home. So it's a win-win for everybody, and happy to help if we can.
And that's what we all want, right? Peace in the house.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marks. And like I said, if anyone has questions, reach out to one of the care coaches and we will get you and your furry friend on the right track with the settle mat. And hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you, Dr. Marks.
Thank you. See you guys soon.
Bye.